When it comes to Florida's public schools, there's good news and bad news. The good news is that graduation rates appear to have improved. The bad news is a weakened economy has forced counties to cut the budgets even further. Joining us to discuss this is Louie Rodriguez, Assistant Professor in the Department of Educational Leadership and Policy Studies at Florida International University, and Robert Hill, Program Professor in the Fischler School of Education and Human Services at Nova Southeastern University. Gentlemen, thanks so much for coming. Number one, can we really say that graduation rates have really increased? The numbers seem small, but I guess a win is a win. How about that, Louie?
I mean, the issue always comes down to method. How are we measuring dropouts? The reports that were put out a few days ago are using a particular method that is questionable to a lot of academics about the accuracy of actually capturing our dropouts. Another thing that was mentioned is the issue of including GEDs in that number. And a
GED, those who earn a high school equivalent diploma.
Right. And that is going to inflate the actual number. But a couple of academics out there are actually promoting other measures, and I think they're more accurate. And just in 2005, we were reporting in the state of Florida a 50% graduation rate. In Miami-Dade,
50%?
50%. In Miami-Dade County, actually statewide, it was 55%,
right.
And particularly acute among African-American, Black, and Latino Hispanic students and low-income students. So that's a major challenge that we have yet to address. Miami-Dade County is also up there. I think they're reporting something like only about a 5% dropout rate, but it's actually said to be more closer to about 50%. And if you look at the actual numbers of graduates from comparing a freshman class to a outgoing graduating class, you can have 1,000 freshmen, but 300 students actually walking across that stage. I mean, that says a lot. And that's happening across our South Florida schools.
And also, each state has different formulas to calculate their graduation rate, but by 2010, all the states have to have a uniform formula to calculate the graduation rate. But the head of the Republican Party here in Florida, Jim Greer, needed something to boast about, and 10 years ago it was 60%, now it's at 75%, but as Louie said, 25% aren't walking across the stage. And so we're not 49.
And the numbers could even be higher.
And the numbers could be higher if you don't count the GED students, but so we're not 49 to 48, we're 45.
Why would students want to take a GED degree as opposed to graduating from high school?
Here in Florida, you need 24 credits to graduate, and because summer school is no longer a viable alternative and we don't have block scheduling as we used to, that they get behind. And if they fall 1 or 2 credits behind, they're not going to walk with their class, even though we've threatened to take away their driver's license privileges in the state. They feel that why should I stick in school? The number one reason why dropouts, according to Colin Powell's Foundation, America Promises, is that they're not challenged in their class, they're not motivated, and they fail to see a relevance to the courses that they're enrolled in.
And of course, the relevance is huge, particularly in today's economy, where we realize that the need for an advanced degree becomes even more and more critical, despite the difficult economic times that we're currently facing. So when we look at Miami-Dade County Public Schools having to further cut their budget by $89 million as approved this week, what does that tell us about our educational system for the next year?
If we focus specifically on the issue of dropouts, the resources that these students need, like maybe trust counselors, they're the ones that are going to be hurting the most. So we could only expect this dropout rate to increase in light of these cuts.
And of course, there's school closings to boot. Though in Miami-Dade County, I believe that the superintendent, Alberto Carvalho, has indicated that he's not going to close the schools, that if necessary, he will oversee those schools himself.
Sure. The 4 critically low achieving schools in Miami-Dade County, Miami-Edison, Miami Central, Liberty City Elementary, and Holmes Elementary, they've been talked about being closed down for a number of years, but I think they invested $4 million to look at the data between now and the spring to see if their scores improve. They did vote the other night to close 4 charter schools, although they approved the opening of 19 new charter schools.
What does that tell us? What does that tell us when we approve 19 charter schools? Charter schools are really popular. People definitely do seem to like them. They seem to be free from some of the burdens of the public school system's bureaucracies. Number one, are they doing a good job, Louie? And number two, if they are doing a good job, Why doesn't that become a model for public schools to adopt?
Oh, you're right. I mean, I think the issue with Oxford that closed, they were actually not a failing school, but it was in financial disarray that they were in the process of correcting. But I think the research on charter schools is still left out to the jury. So a lot of studies that have been done to date show that they're actually not performing as expected because they have curriculum flexibility, leadership, and staffing flexibility. But there are some that are actually doing well across the country, and I think, like you said, we should learn and maybe perhaps model. The thing I find interesting in this whole charter public debate, even though charters are public, is that we are relying on charter schools to educate our students. If we know that there are certain aspects of charter schools that are actually working, why can't we take that and just do that inside our public schools if we're really about the children? And really about giving teachers a great experience and supporting and caring about our teachers, why can't we just do that in our public schools that aren't charter?
And what about the way we finance education? We can look at higher education. Just this week, Governor Charlie Crist has allowed public universities to be able to increase tuition 15% for the next 3 consecutive years. What about the way, do we have to readdress the way we finance education? We know it's important, but Florida still is one of the lowest in education funding per student.
Well, there was going to be an issue on the fall ballot, Amendment 5. It was declared unconstitutional, and it was taken off at the last hour, final hour by a judge. Right now in the state of Florida, 40% of the per pupil expenditure at the K through 12 level comes from the state, about 8.9% from the federal government, but over 50% is at the local level, and funded through property taxes. So yes, with the weakening economy, we've seen huge deficits, not to mention skyrocketing costs of food and fuel and
But you
energy.
know, Robert, even when property levels were high, funding seemed inadequately low.
Oh, absolutely.
So what's the answer? I mean, is part of it because it's the political process that makes it hard, Louie?
I think that's part of it. The other issue is there's a study that just came out called the Working Group on Finance. And one of the things they found is we are not connecting public funding for education with student learning outcomes. What we're doing is connecting the money with compliance. And all we're doing is accountability.
Everything's been focused on being accountable, as if there's a disconnect between that and funding.
Right. And it seems normal and obvious to focus on student learning, but we're just making sure that our schools are actually doing what they're supposed to be doing. But one of those things is not high achievement amongst our students.
And of course, accountability is important, but some people have suggested that there's really no correlation between how much funding goes into a public school and a good education.
There are many examples of that in our urban areas, but I think we rank at the 49th or 50th in per pupil expenditure. If you look at New Jersey or New York, there's whole different funding formulas. California has 70% coming from the state budget as opposed to the local level.
Is there any state that's doing a particularly good job? Is there any state that you would say, wow, Florida should really look at this program, at this model? Louie?
I know Massachusetts, they have among the highest per pupil expenditure, and they are doing well they're actually on the top of public schools in the whole country. So I think and that's a whole other context as well. I mean, they do have their low-income students, they have immigrant population.
They also have a state income tax, I believe.
I believe so.
And
But one of the problems is, given the governor or the legislators, if they had the choice to raise taxes or to cut spending because they can't operate in the deficit, they're going to cut programs.
But people voted in favor of smaller class size.
Absolutely.
They actually voted to be able to say, we'll make the effort, whatever needs to be done for education, we will do. Whatever happened to that? Is that public will gone?
Well, they just got permission to relax those, the 2002 class size reduction amendment because of the times that we are in right now. They're so dire they can't achieve 18-to-1 pupil ratio in K through 3 or 25 in the middle schools or high schools. So yes, we voted it narrowly won, but that came at a tremendous expense, and that perhaps contributed to the state that we're in right now.
And Louie, one last quick question for you. We have fewer dollars for Miami-Dade County Public Schools, but student enrollment's also down. Why?
I mean, I think a lot of people are, with the economic crunch, they're finding that it's hard to buy a home here, and so people are starting to move north to parts of northern Florida and the Carolinas, et cetera. And I think that's a huge...
But shouldn't then that make it easier for Miami-Dade County Public Schools to have less children to educate?
Yeah.
But at $7,000 per pupil expenditure on average,
as a fixed cost,
depending upon the age and the needs of the child, Broward and Dade County have lost 31,000 children in the last 4 years.
That's a lot. I'm afraid we're out of time. I'd like to thank Louie Rodriguez and Robert Hill for joining us. Up next, Miami-Dade's property appraiser will be decided by a December election. Or will it? Stay tuned.